So I'm going to do something a little different today. And I'm going to invite you to use your imaginations. And I know for some people it's easier to use your imaginations if you close your eyes. So if you close your eyes, that's fine. If somebody next to you is snoring, you have my permission to elbow them. But I think a lot of times we learn through stories. And that's one of the reasons the Bible tells so many stories. And so I'm going to tell a story. And again, in some ways it's like a children's story because we're going to be talking about sheep. And we all know that sheep don't talk, but the sheep in the story are going to talk. They're going to communicate with each other. So I think that your imaginations can handle that. And so let's meet our main character. Our main character is John. So Adam told me between services that he thought the name should be Bert. So it could be Lambert. But Adam's not giving the sermon, I am. So this is Johnny and his sister Betty. And they were born in the wintertime, and they spent a lot of their winter in the barns with the other sheep in the flock, or at least the sheep that they knew in the flock. And a couple times a day, the shepherd would come to them and bottle feed them to supplement what their mother was able to give. So they continued to grow throughout that time. And they knew that they were safe. They knew that they were taken care of. The shepherd would bring in hay for them throughout the winter to make sure they had enough to eat. And then spring came. And the grass began to grow out in the fields. And so the shepherd would lead them out from the barns that they'd known their entire life, beyond the gates, and out into the fields beyond to come to know what their life was going to be like in this time beyond winter. And Johnny's not a bad sheep, but like most sheep, he's a little hard-headed. And so there were times where Johnny and his sister and other sheep would occasionally not pay attention. And so the first time that happened, and the rest of the flock began to move away from him, he felt a sharp pain in his side where the shepherd had taken a little stone and thrown it at him to get his attention. And Johnny, being a sheep, popped up and said, "Oh, there's the rest of my flock." And so he moved on after the rest of the flock. Now, being a part of a flock, there were other sheep that were older than Johnny was, and one of them's name was Michael. Michael was an old ram, and he would tell the younger rams that, you are a part of a good flock. You don't have any clue how blessed you are to be a part of a flock with a good shepherd. Because when I was young, I was a part of a flock that did not have a good shepherd, a flock that did not care for the sheep, a shepherd who grew fat off eating the sheep. But you are a part of a good flock. You are a part of that because you have a good shepherd who leads you, who knows where the waters flow, who knows where the grass will grow, and make sure that you have enough, and make sure that you are safe and protected. But you're not always going to understand exactly what the shepherd is doing all the time. But your shepherd knows what is right for you. And the first time that was really tested for Johnny was shearing season, where for the first time he saw all the sheep be gathered into a pen, and then the shepherd comes and begins to shear the sheep around him, and Johnny is terrified by what's happening here because he's going to touch me, he's going to take that which I know. How do I know he's not going to hurt me? But at the end of the time, when the heavy wool has been taken away and the cool breeze begins to blow against his skin, and he realizes that he's not been hurt by this process, he goes and he runs and he jumps with all the other young lambs who have been sheared for the first time as they feel new energy, as they feel new lightness because this weight that they've been carrying has been taken away. Did I mention that sheep are sometimes hard-headed? So there was another time where Johnny had let the flock continue to move away from him because sheep like to eat. And so he was munching on a particular bunch of grass. He seemed to be just fine with not leaving, and if he didn't have to move, that was one less thing he had to worry about. And he didn't realize that in staying where he was, that he was further and further away from the rest of the flock, until one time he looked up and he saw a lion beginning to stalk at him out of the grass. Now, Johnny had never seen a lion before, but he knew that there was no way he could outrun this thing. And he knew there was no way he was going to survive this moment, and he had no clue of what was going to happen to him in this time until he heard a loud shout, and he saw the lion stop because a rock had hit him right between the eyes. And he turns around and he sees the shepherd running at him at full speed, another rock in the sling, beginning to wind it up for a second shot, which hits the lion in the side. And then the shepherd stepped between Johnny and the lion with his rod and his staff out, and drove the lion away. And then he looks up at the shepherd's face, which had been terrifying, and now all of a sudden looks kind, and nudges Johnny back towards the rest of the flock. Speaks kind words to him as he reunites him with the rest of the herd. Now, sheep don't stay lambs for very long. And it wasn't long before Johnny's horns began to grow. And he began to become like Michael had been for him. The one who would, for the rest of the sheep in the flock, would be the one who they would gather around, and he would tell them the stories of what it meant to be a part of a good flock with a good shepherd. What it meant to know that when we go from this place, that the good shepherd knows where to lead us, where the grass is green, where the water is cool. That this is a shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep, who is willing at those points where others may walk away, that he will be there to protect us and guide us and welcome us back. And Johnny had never noticed it before that moment when the shepherd had stepped between him and the lion, but the cloak that the shepherd wore was not wool. It was a lion's pelt. And he began to tell stories to the next generation about the good shepherd and about the flock that you were part of. And that the shepherd, even though he may do things that you don't understand, even though you may not always see him all the time, he's there. And he knows what he's doing. And as you learn what it is to be a part of the flock, it means learning how to trust the shepherd who was there when you were born, the shepherd who was there when you were sheared the first time, the shepherd who was there when you wandered away, and the shepherd who welcomed you back home. For the shepherd is our Lord.